Are you a football fan who appreciates the history of the game? Have you made the pilgrimage to the Mount Rushmore of all of football? I'm talking about the NFL Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. Well, if you fall into such a category, you've joined a club of over 10 million people. That's how many people on an annual basis, according to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, make the journey to the birthplace of football. And chances are, if you have made the trek to Canton to see, in the famous words of Hall of Fame coach John Madden, the bus talk to each other, there's a good chance you've come into contact with the work of Dan Marrazza. Marrazza serves as the Director of Digital Strategy for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It's his job to entice football fans such as you or I, from a digital perspective, to engage with all the hallowed halls of the Hall of Fame have to offer. It's his job to get you and I in the door to view the best and brightest bus and people who have ever played and coached and contributed to the game of football. Marrazza's strategy is simple. He's committed to developing content and strategies which maximize the purpose and potential of experiences and develop strategies which help you come back for more. He's a national Emmy Award-winning content creator who develops strategies intended to win at everything he does. And Marrazza joined me this week to have a conversation about the diversity of joy that he has in his work, the best part of working at and living the Hall of Fame each and every day, and what football fans can expect from a digital perspective when they visit the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It was certainly an exciting conversation about football and all this great game has to offer in the past, present, and its future. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, my friend, and I'm super excited to be with you today to talk about your exciting work with the NFL Pro Football Hall of Fame. Great to be with you this afternoon, and thank you so very much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me on, Kevin.
Absolutely. So, Dan, with the NFL being a 365-degree sort of business and always on, 12 months a year, I'm curious in your role with the Pro Football Hall of Fame, how do you socially keep people engaged with everything going on at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, my friend?
That's a great question. It's a great question. And I think for us, the thing that it starts with is that we're, as much as we are celebrating the NFL, we are the Pro Football Hall of Fame, which includes all football. That includes whether it's Canadian Football League or the USFL or whatever the case may be, is that, and in addition to being the Pro Football Hall of Fame, we also are telling the story not only of the 371 members of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, but also telling those stories of football in general. That a big thing with us is that we're celebrating all things football, whether that's what goes on the field, whether that is even pop culture references, whether it's Hall of Famers who are in movies or even celebrities that maybe played football in college and then got into acting, and then we're highlighting some of their football past. So there's so many stories to tell. And in our case is that, yeah, you have the NFL season from September until February, but we have our enshrinement ceremony is in August. We select the new class in February, and this month, including this week, we had members of the new Hall of Fame class that were in the Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame as a business, we do a lot of events in the community as well as a lot of events in the community as well. So at different times of the year, there's different stories to tell. Like, granted, when it's January, there's a lot of things related to the playoffs and the Super Bowl and things like that. And in August, it's more about the ceremonies and the enshrinement. But there's always stories to be told, especially when we have such a great brand that allows us to touch on everything that it is with football, and especially with football being the most popular sport in the United States. There is no shortage of opportunities for us to kind of get involved in the conversation.
And I'm curious, how do you sort of execute using the popularity of the NFL to your advantage when you're socially telling a story for the Pro Football Hall of Fame?
Yeah, so when we tell stories, the thing that was the most important thing, I'm coming up on 1 year being here. I joined at the end of March last year, is that we want to know who we are. What is the brand of who we are and what we represent? And nail that. And whether we are seen by 5 people or 5 million people, we want the best possible experience, and we want that consistency. Once we build out that as a foundation, it allows us to ramp up and to get a larger audience. So for us, the way we deliver that, like I said, is we have it's consistently trying to tell that story, but also trying to do it in ways that are new and that are innovative. A really good example of this was a couple weeks ago. We announced the matchup for the Hall of Fame game this year is going to be the New York Jets and the Cleveland Browns. So we partnered with an artist called Falling in Sand, who makes this awesome artwork and sculptures out of sand, where we used it to announce the matchup, where the sand came down, and as the sand came down, it gradually revealed the helmets of the Jets and the Browns, and it told that story in an interesting, fun way. So we're always at the forefront of trying to embrace new technologies and have new partnerships that allow us to tell those stories. But at the same time, also, we have a great archives at our disposal that what you see on display at the Pro Football Hall of Fame is only a small fraction of the amount of things that are actually in the collection. So whether it's the photos, the film, the artifacts, and things of that nature, we have so many things that, regardless of what time of the year it is, and regardless of what era, is that sometimes we'll have old films, so the storytelling will be out of a different mold. Sometimes it'll be current, and the storytelling will be in a different way. So a lot of it is embracing the technologies of different eras and crafting that around what we have available to us, and just really trying to capitalize on a really extensive collection that we have in our possession.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Dad, I know it's important to you to use creative communications to tell a story. So what does that mean to you, buddy?
Yeah, I would say it's kind of what I started touching on. A second ago. I think it's that aspect of storytelling as a craft has been a thing since the beginning of time, whether it was cavemen in the old days that were telling stories by mouth or writing them on the walls of their caves. And then you have books and magazines and newspapers and television. Is that storytelling as a concept has always been a thing. Humans have always had a thirst for it. I think as the world evolves, technology evolves. We have obviously the internet first and foremost, but then you have, like I said, artists, you have video, you have artificial intelligence, where we haven't utilized any of that for content yet, but that's even something that's interesting as we go forward. Some of the possibilities that creates and some of the artwork and things like that. So it's just being at the forefront of as I was kind of saying, establishing our brand and what we are, and identifying what those stories are that we have to tell, and then being at the forefront of technology to try to tell them in the most creative ways we possibly can.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Dad, before you joined the Pro Football Hall of Fame, I know you led the efforts as with the first expansion team in the NHL and their digital department developing and launching their digital strategy and their social media. So tell me about before joining the Football Hall of Fame and how you use what you learned in the NHL in your current role, my friend.
Yeah, no. So I've lived. It's actually, if you look at the map that's behind me, that's it's a map of all the places I've been. I have thumbtacks in there, including the places I've lived. And even though I'm only 35 years old, I've lived in 8 states and been in a variety of different jobs over the years. And I've been really lucky that a lot of them have been very different of each other, different than each other, and allowed me to learn a lot of different things. Starting out with Las Vegas, I mean, for one, the city of Las Vegas is probably the most unique city in the United, maybe in the world for that matter. So landing there, where now that's, I mean, it's only going to be 7 years ago that I got there, but people forget now. You know, you have an NFL team there now. You might have an MLB team. That there's so many sports that are flocking to Las Vegas, and that WNBA is there. Is that when we got there, we were the first ones that nobody, you know, sports betting wasn't legalized in the United States yet either. Is that it was a really new thing that there had never been a hockey team in Las Vegas. There had never been any major league franchise in Las Vegas, and it's a city that inherently is so unique. I think the things that you learn there and that are interesting there is that the brand we had was so different than any brand I've ever been a part of or I've ever seen in other sports. Where whether that was on social media or whether that was the shows that we had in the arena before games that were probably one of the only places to have a Cirque du Soleil performance during the intermissions, which is so different. So just to be in that environment that really teaches you that entertainment, that it's not just about sports. It's not just about the X's and O's of who wins. It's really about entertainment. And you see Vegas shows and you see things like that. And we go back to storytelling, and they're all storytellers in their own way. So Las Vegas was the ultimate opportunity of really learning the value of combining entertainment with sports to message and sell sports. Pivoting off of that, going to DraftKings, where I've told the joke before that I lived in Boston to do that, where DraftKings is based, is that I was probably one of the first people ever that had to leave Las Vegas to get involved in sports betting. But very similarly, when I got to Boston there in 2018, is it was right when the Supreme Court legalized sports betting, and now you can't watch any sporting events without having the advertisements and every commercial across the screen. But even only 5 years ago, it's 5 years ago, we were first in that regard. We were the first social media account to launch the DraftKings Sportsbook Twitter account of a legalized mobile sportsbook in the United States. So a lot of the things there, which was different, was I had always been in hockey up to that point, starting when I was an intern for over a decade. Now I was not only in every sport, but I was selling a product as much as you're selling the lifestyle and a fan experience. And just being at the forefront of learning all these things and being one of the first people involved in sports betting, you know, gave me a really kind of a different background too. So, you know, then bringing it to the Pro Football Hall of Fame is all of these things are so different in style. I mentioned the Vegas Golden Knights, for example, being a brand that's, you know, very entertainment based and very, you know, like, I don't know if out there is the word, but, you know, just very flamboyant, just like the city itself, to match the city of Las Vegas. And then the Pro Football Hall of Fame is a history museum. Is that I'm a believer that having been exposed to all these different walks of life and these different experiences and these different products and these different sports, that I bring a little piece of that wherever I go. And I find myself, I feel like the experiences have enriched me by being able to see so many different things.
And diversity of perspective is a good thing, isn't it?
For sure. I mean, when I was younger, I always thought I was a hockey guy. And yeah, I still love hockey. I still got some jerseys hanging on my wall from some of the places that I'm looking at over my shoulder at some of the places that I've worked. But there are so many things that I've gotten exposed to that I would have never gotten exposed to had I just stayed in hockey forever. And I'm like, wait a second. Just because this is a different business doesn't mean that it wouldn't apply to hockey, or doesn't mean that, you know, something from hockey wouldn't apply to this. So being able to bring those perspectives, as opposed to being somebody who just does one thing for so long, like you said, it's really invaluable to see so many different styles of businesses, but also the different types of people with different backgrounds that you know, I try to be a sponge as best I can and learn from some of the great coworkers that I have. And then you bring in their diverse backgrounds and things like that too. And it really is like for any young person that's looking to work in sports, to be able to diversify your experiences, have the opportunity to, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dad, tell me, what's the best part about working at the Pro Football Hall of Fame? I know you've only worked there for about a year, buddy, but I'm curious to know some of the great stories that you might be exposed to since working there, my friend.
Yeah, no, that's it's one of the things that's so different about this job compared to any job that I've been in is that when you're at the Vegas Golden Knights, you have one team, and in our case, we were a team that didn't have any history, so there was no history to even touch on per se. In the case of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, we have 371 Hall of Famers whose careers go back over more than 100 years and who played for all 32 franchises as well. Not all 32 franchises, but most of the franchises have Hall of Famers, and you also have some franchises that don't even exist anymore that have guys that played in the Hall of Fame or played football that are now in the Hall of Fame. So there's so many more stories to tell, and I'm a history buff as it is. Even besides sports, I love studying American history and battlefields and things like that. And to be able to tap into that, you learn, and like I mentioned, the archives is so to me, it's almost like I would say the coolest thing is being like a kid in a candy store that rather than having to hunt down sometimes all of these materials, it's in your archives, it's in your office. That these stories they're there to be found. They're just begging to be found if you go through there and find them. So being able to tell some of those stories is fun. But I think the thing out of everything that stands out to me that I've found really special about working here is that the way you're able to touch people. That one of the content series that we put out is when the new Hall of Fame class finds out that they were selected, they get a knock on their door from another Hall of Famer, and it's a surprise. You're now in the Hall of Fame. And you see the emotion, you see tears in many cases, not only of them, but of their families. And you see what it really means to people. And you even see for fans who maybe this was their favorite player from 20 years ago. And now they might be 40, 50 years old now, but they're a 12-year-old all over again because their favorite player just got, the special moment of being selected. That being able to tell these stories in that way, that means so much to the people involved and so much to the fans, is that's the special thing because we're really creating lifelong memories for these people. And that's something we get to do every day. And that's something that's really special and that's been really fun about working here.
Yeah, absolutely. And has there been particular players or group of players that you've been honored or starstruck to meet since you've been working at the Pro Football Hall of Fame?
That's a great question. And one of the things that, the longer you've worked in sports is you still love it just as much, but it's a lot harder for you to get starstruck just because you've been around a little bit and you've interacted with all sorts of people. I think the ones, though, that always get me are the ones that were unplanned. What I mean by that is I've led influencer programs before. I've worked with people in entertainment in addition to sports. But when you put out a piece of content and then all of a sudden a celebrity that you can't imagine engages with it, and like a really good example is the actor Jeremy Piven from Entourage and Old School, among other things, is that we had posted a post of him playing football at a younger age. And he was so excited by it that he followed us. He sent us a private message thanking us and was felt it was so special. And similar, we had Darius Rucker from Hootie and the Blowfish similarly engaged with us in that manner. So to me, those ones that are impromptu, that you don't expect, coming from people that are popular, that come from walks of life that maybe aren't sports, that maybe I haven't worked with in as much, those always get you. But out of all of them, the one that got me the most was the one day we got a notification and I saw that we got followed by The Rock. When we got followed by The Rock on social media as a kid who grew up in the 90s, who, was a huge wrestling fan, and you see now he's one of the biggest stars in Hollywood. When we engaged with The Rock, that was one that really took me back a little bit, even more so than meeting some other folks in person, because he's just so larger than life. And, the fact that I put something out that The Rock saw and he liked and he engaged with, things like that, even for someone like me who's been around in the business for more than a decade, those are the days that are really fun, that you go home and you say, man, not everybody gets to do this with their life. Not everybody gets to do this at work. And these are really special opportunities.
And he has a football background, right? He played football in college too. So
That was what we got him to engage with. We had a photo of him and Warren Sapp. So Warren Sapp is in the Hall of Fame, and they played together at University of Miami. And we had shared a photo of the two of them together, and it got The Rock involved. So no, exactly. And you wonder sometimes is that he might be The Rock, and he'll be the first one. And this is what he was kind of acknowledging in his engagement with us was like, but Warren Sapp is a football Hall of Famer, So even somebody like The Rock could look at a guy like Warren Sapp that the way myself and others and millions of people are in awe of The Rock. The Rock is in awe of his teammate Warren Sapp and some of the folks that we have in our museum. And that's what makes it really cool too, is that you see people that you look up to and that others look up to, and they look up to the people that are in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. That's really cool.
yeah, absolutely. And Dan, I'm curious to ask you, how do you think we can use digital storytelling to really grow a brand in sports? What do you think the key is there?
Oh, there's so many ways. I mean, besides just the building fans and through content that's relatable, it's also, I think, especially the pandemic taught us, there's a lot of ways to grow a business this way. I think that there's a lot of revenue opportunities through social media. When I started in social media in 2010, it was so new that you couldn't even attach a photo to a tweet. It was brand new. Nobody really knew what it was. And then as it expanded, it became more organized and strategies got involved. And now it's a thing that has the ability to be a major moneymaker. That I think what we learned during the pandemic is that a lot of sporting companies in the past were so reliant on ticket sales and in-person attendance to drive the bottom line that all of a sudden the pandemic happens and that revenue's gone now. There are no in-person events and social distancing. But social media and digital is something that is constant, that even if the world is quarantined and everything is shut down, social media still exists. There are still revenue opportunities there. And I find that in terms of not just growing a brand, but growing a business, is that there's a tremendous opportunity to really drive the bottom line and do so in a way that is kind of pandemic proof, recession proof. And I think that aspect of social media as far as growing a company in addition to growing a brand is one that I find really interesting, because whether it's through sponsored content, whether it's through digital marketing and things of that nature, is there's so many clever ways and interesting ways to engage people that also drive the business forward, making money. And I find the way that that's grown once I started is something that, when social media started, some people would question, is this really a profession? Is this going to be long term? Is this Facebook and is this Twitter going to last? When you start seeing the revenue growth, not only do you know that they're going to last, but you see that the places that you see vice presidents of social media that never existed 10 years ago. You see chief marketing officers that have social media backgrounds, that you start seeing business people have these types of background and grow. And a lot of that is based on the overall business tie-ins and revenue growth and things of that nature. So I find that way and fueling the business as a whole is something that makes digital really uniquely positioned, maybe compared to any other aspect of the business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a two-part question for you here, buddy.
Sure.
March is Women's History Month, and it's also a National Disability Awareness Month, my friend. So I'm curious, when you think of women in football and sports, what do you think of, my friend, and how important do you think it is to celebrate women and folks with disabilities into the workforce as well?
For sure. I mean, you touched on it right there where you mentioned, Women's History Month. We actually have an exhibit in the Pro Football Hall of Fame that is women's impact on football. And it highlights some of those stories, whether it is officials, whether it's coaches, players for that matter, that I think that story is one that those stories are there. I think the number of them as inclusivity becomes more commonplace and overdue and becomes more of a thing and more folks have opportunities, I think the number of those stories to be told is only going to grow. But that being said, there's also some of the stories that maybe I didn't even know myself until I started working here. I learned since I started working here that the first woman owner of an NFL team was all the way back in 1947. And her name was Violet Bidwell for the Chicago Cardinals, now the Arizona Cardinals. And that the first season she owned the team, they won the NFL championship all the way back in 1947. So there are so many of those stories to be told. That being said, as opportunities grow for more folks to be involved in the sport, because I truly believe it is for everyone, there really are going to be even more stories to tell. And I find that the Pro Football Hall of Fame could have that central place in that. That as I mentioned earlier, we're not just telling the story of the 371 Hall of Famers, we're telling the story as the sport as a whole. So as more of these folks start making their impacts and we learn that diversity of thought and diversity of background is something that moves us all forward, is that I find that we have the ability to be part of that growth, because as with our platforms is being able to celebrate that, and it's the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and this is the accomplishment that someone had, is it, I don't want to say validates it, because we're not the one validating it, but what it does is it adds another stamp on it that shows that really shows that this is the history of the game, and this is where they celebrate all of the greatest of the game, going all the way back to the beginning of the sport. And now you have folks with different backgrounds that get involved in this too, that it clearly establishes that this is not just a sport played by one group of people, that this is really welcome for everybody. So I've been excited, that we've been able to tell some fun stories with that throughout the month of March, and we're only going to continue to tell more of them going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dad, tell me, when people come to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, what can they look forward to in the future that you're working on that you can share with me this afternoon?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it depends on what we try to have something for everyone. And what I mean by that is whether it's the grandfather, the father, the son, the grandmother, the granddaughter coming in, we find that different people look forward to different things. We have certain exhibits that are really the history of the game, and they have some of these old school leather helmets, and you sometimes see the grandparents walk in and look at these helmets. And even some of the Hall of Famers. We just had a couple of the Hall of Famers came in this week. Joe Klecko, who played for the New York Jets in the 80s, and DeMarcus Ware, who played for the Cowboys and the Broncos in the 2000s. And Joe Klecko, who's in his 60s now, sees the leather helmet, and he's joking around, oh, that's the one I wore back when I was in high school, which kind of like joking around. So you see somebody like that get excited by that. And we also have another section of the Hall of Fame that celebrates the history of Madden video games. And you'll always see a lot of young kids coming in that you could play Madden. You can play Madden at the Hall of Fame, that you'll see lines of kids swarming to get involved in there too. So it's complete opposite ends of the spectrum to have a video game about modern players and have an old school leather helmet. And there's so many different things like that. We have exhibits that demonstrate the size of the biceps and the thighs of some of the players. And you see people who could fit their entire bodies into these things. We have another thing that's really cool that we have is we have a section of the Hall of Fame that's dedicated to the modern game. So something special happens on a Sunday in a game, and oftentimes by Wednesday or Thursday of that week, the jersey's in the Hall of Fame, where we had Brock Purdy from the 49ers this year came on with such a bang that we very quickly had the jersey that Brock Purdy wore in his first game on display in the Hall of Fame. And the season wasn't even over yet. It ended up being when we posted it on Instagram, it was actually the most engaged Instagram post the Hall of Fame ever had, was this Brock Purdy jersey. So between leather helmets, between video games, between jerseys from the modern era, we find that we really try and really strive to have something for everybody. So depending on who the person is and what their background is and maybe what their age bracket is when they come to the hall, we would find that different people really are the most excited to see completely different things.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dad, what are you most excited about this August with this crop of inductees into the Hall of Fame and the ceremonies itself, my friend?
One of the things that's interesting to me, that's exciting, but sometimes you start questioning yourself, and I'm getting a little bit older, is that a lot of these Hall of Famers are a lot closer to my age now than they used to be. Out of our 9 class members, 3 of them are within 5 years of me. They're still all older than me. I'll get past at some point there. As we work with younger and younger Hall of Famers, is that a lot of them are a lot more active on social media, and I find that that's really interesting. Is that I've been pleasantly surprised that even some of the Hall of Famers in their 50s and 60s are still active on social media too. As we skew even younger and younger, you find more more individuals like that. And when you find more individuals that not only have social media, that want to be active on it, there's so many opportunities to work together. Where I mentioned ago, that leather helmet that one of the players put on, we shared that because DeMarcus Ware shared it first. We were able to work together on that. And it was his video that he took with his cell phone when he came in. And to be able to see that generation shift is that we celebrate everybody equally, but to really see some of these guys come in who really want to be part of telling these stories themselves and really be involved with telling the stories too, I find really exciting. And especially as we get to August, when last year we had more than 100 Hall of Famers came to enshrinement, which was more than half the Hall of Famers showed up. So seeing the next group come in this year too, it's really exciting there too, just because it's the greatest concentration of legendary athletes that you could have in one place at one time, and they're all in at your office. They're at your office, and that they're there, to be part of the show and part of the festivities. So I'm really excited for that in August, but especially as we see so many of them get so much more involved with their own social media. As somebody who is involved in social media, to see them embrace that is really exciting because it just creates so many more opportunities for fun ways to tell stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Dad, my final question for you this afternoon has to do with your own personal and professional legacy, my friend. And how do you want that to be defined?
Yeah, that's a great question. And for me, if you asked me this question 3 years ago or 4 years ago, it might be different than what my answer is now. I'm someone who, like many of us, my role had gotten eliminated during the pandemic and, went through some difficult times there before landing a pro football game. And one of the things that it gives you a lot of perspective on life. And one of the things I learned is that these are dream jobs. As we're talking about these special moments and these once in a lifetime opportunities, whether someone's at the Pro Football Hall of Fame or with the Chicago Bears or whatever the case may be, is that these are dream jobs that many people aspire to, that if anyone's lucky enough to be in one of them, that it's very special. So for me, what I hope my legacy is at the end of the day, as great as telling these stories are, though, we're not curing diseases. We're not going to the moon. We're not, saving people's lives necessarily. But personally, I'm good at this, and I believe, and I'm passionate about this. And I really like helping people. That feeling that this is the kid who's coming out of college and able to come under my wing and give them some advice on breaking into the industry. And then you see them get their first job and you see how excited they are. Or you see the person who was in the shoes that maybe I was, where, you maybe fell on some hard times and you so badly just want to get your career back and get your life back on track. And you're able to help people there too and help them get their lives back on track. One of the things that I've launched is, it's a group of industry allies where we try to combine forces and we work together to help people not only break into the industry, but people that maybe either fell in hard times or want to make a career pivot. So I'm really hoping my legacy, as I said, because at the end of the day, as cool as the stories are, like I said, we're not curing cancer. We're not negotiating peace treaties. But if I do this well and I'm able to help others this way, I'm able to help others live their dreams too. And that's a really cool feeling. That's a really cool feeling. And I would love to, at the end of the day, you look back, hopefully 40, 50 years from now, when I'm looking back on my life, and I'm able to say that not only did I do something that I loved every day, but that I was able to help others live their dreams too. That's special to me. That's special. And I would really love my legacy to be someone that did what he loved every day and helped others live their dreams as well. And I think more than engagement, and as great as that is, and as great as growth is and growing a business, to really be able to impact people that way, I'm really hoping something that could be my legacy.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dan, since you brought it up, I'll finish with one final question. If someone's looking to break into this business of digital media and social media and sports, what's the best piece of advice that you would give to them?
Ooh, there's so many, but I would say, as a short version, I would invite them to connect with me on Twitter. I would invite them to connect Twitter or LinkedIn and send me a message. Is that because I think for different people, it might be different pieces of advice, and it's not necessarily one size fits all. But as I mentioned, it's something that's really special to me to be able to help people. So if anyone's watching this, I'm at Dan Marrazza on my Twitter and LinkedIn. I invite you to connect with me, and I'd love to connect with you on an individual basis. give you some personalized advice because, like I said, that's special to me and it means a lot. And I hope I hope I be able to be in a position to help. So that inbox is always open.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Dan, tell me finally, if people want to get connected with the good work that you do at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, or you personally, what's the best way they can do it?
So my personal accounts are just at Dan Marrazza. Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, all the same. And for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, our accounts are Pro Football Left, and that's on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. So you get a few more dad jokes and things like that. I personally want to get all the work on the Pro Football Hall of Fame accounts, but you can connect with me on either one of them. And like I said, looking forward to anybody who wants to connect with me.
Fantastic. Well, Dan, as an old sports reporter myself, I circled this one on the calendar, my friend. I appreciate your thoughts and energy and enthusiasm you brought to our conversation this afternoon, and the work that you do to promote the good game of football, my friend. Great to see you this weekend, and thank you so very much for being here.
And thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. I hope we can do it again sometime.